Welcome to Rock Your Life with Ariane Alexander. If you're just jumping in with me, this is the place to master your mindset, have a lot more fun in life, dive into your spirituality, and basically rock your life. You're going to love today's guest, my friend Danny J Johnson. She is a speaker and podcast host. She has her own podcast called The Best Life Podcast with her friend Jill, which is amazing. And she is on a mission to help influential women navigate life's challenges and free them from mental and emotional bondage so they can live their larger purpose. Danny J's own story is all about starting over and getting a do-over. And that's what she really helps empower women all across the country and the world to do. So let's jump into my convo with my friend Danny J. All right, Danny J, yay! We did it. You're here with me. I'm so excited. Thank you so much for being here.
Yes, I'm so excited to see you again. It's been way too long.
It has. Danny J and I met a long time ago at some fabulous personal development event or something. And it's like hashtag girl crush. Like I've always had the biggest girl crush on you because you're so fun and you have such a vibrancy and you're just like, whatever. And I love that about you.
I feel the same way. Okay, I wanted to tell this funny story just because I think people should hear it. So a couple years ago at an event, and we've been to a couple of events, and we were both single in LA, which is a whole like podcast of its own, I'm sure, like an entire show.
Yes.
But we were at my podcast launch party and I invited Ariane, and my podcast partner and I invited our ex-husbands. So they're at the party, everyone's at the party. And I remember Ariane comes over to me. She's like, hey, check out that guy. And like kind of nods over. And it was my ex-husband. I'm like, nah, we already did that. I'm like, but he is so cute though. I'm like, like you should go to talk to him.
Oh my God. That is funny. I don't remember that, but that is so funny. I'm like, yeah, go for him.
She's like,
You're
hey,
like, yeah.
Him out. I know. Cause I think at the time, we're constantly scanning, looking for guys. And we were like, you have my back. You're like, this guy's cute. I'm like, I know he is, but we already been there, done that. So
that's amazing. I seriously love that. Yes, lots of single and LA stories, but you're not single anymore, so we can't talk about that anymore.
Yep, not single anymore. Yep.
That's good. Well, it's good. It sounds like it looks like you and your boyfriend have a lot of fun travels together, and I always see you on Instagram in fabulous places around the country.
We do. What's so wild about that is being single, like you tell yourself a lot of stories, and I'm sure everybody has their own reasons, but I was finally ready to start to want to be in a relationship. And so I was traveling so much for a whole year and not living anywhere. I was living out of a suitcase. I cut my lease in LA because I was going to be gone so much. And so I decided 2019, I'm like, I want to be in a relationship, so I need to be in one place. So I had narrowed it down to Nashville or Austin because I kept telling myself my future husband is not in LA. And so I was like, I'm going to one of these two places in June. And the irony was I met my boyfriend in February 2019. In LA of all places. And he was traveling a bunch, I was traveling much, and we kept running into each other in different cities. So I had told him the very night we met, I was like, hey, this is nice. Thanks for dinner. I'm leaving. I'll probably never see you again. And then I literally saw him in Las Vegas 2 days later. And then I ran into him in New York and Nashville. And then I was like, you know what? Why am I feeling like I need to be somewhere to be in a relationship when I'm traveling and I'm somehow managing to fall into this relationship? So we just made it official and said, this is working. So why am I fighting it? And so now I'm still not living in Nashville or Austin. I'm still kind of living out of a suitcase 2 years later.
Well, it's cool. It's such a story of synchronicity and how life does what it wants to do. Life will lead us how it wants to lead us. And I think this is, we're going to talk about so many things today because you're such an expert at starting over and doing things differently. But it's like, the more we try to control life will just laugh in our face instead of just letting life lead us. And that's a perfect example. Like you're like, I'm going to leave and I'm going to go to Nashville and Austin and find my man and da da da. And you're like, not so much.
Yeah. I swear to God, my whole life is like that. I'm like, if there's a God, God wants to just laugh at every plan I make because it always turns out completely different. I'm like, I just need to stop making plans and thinking I know what I need. I'm just going to go with the flow and just let life surprise me.
Oh, I love that. I love that. Well, so tell me more about that because this is the thing is like so much about COVID and what's happened is you really help people with starting over and a do-over. And that's the thing. I think people can try to control it if they have this goal or whatever it is. But what do you think about that? How do you work with your clients in helping them in a starting over situation?
Well, I'll give you a little bit of backstory behind this. So my background originally, back was I went to college, I got a degree in physical education, and I was the first person in my family to get a degree, which was very exciting. My mom was very much like, you need to get a degree, go to college, get a good job, all that we all heard growing up, or a lot of us did. So I got my degree, and then my very first job, I became an acrobat at SeaWorld. So I just say I ran off and joined the circus, which of course made my parents very proud using that degree. And I ended up in San Diego, and within a couple of months, I woke up literally one morning, fell out of bed. And I thought, like when your foot's asleep and it's kind of tingling, kind of felt like my entire legs were asleep. So I was like, oh, this is really awkward and weird. And long story short, by the end of the day, I called the trainer from the show, and she said, it sounds like you have sciatica. And it was like starting to be kind of painful. And then by the next day, I couldn't walk at all. I had to army crawl to the door when a neighbor was knocking, and I was screaming in pain, went to the ER. They didn't know what was wrong. They sent me home, and then I ended up in the hospital, flying home to my parents in Vegas, ended up in the hospital for a month and found out I got a bacterial infection, and I was paralyzed for a year.
Oh my gosh.
Yes. So I couldn't walk. And it was very weird because when I say paralyzed, like I could feel my legs. Like I remember a doctor coming in and he goes, can you feel this? And he like took a needle and poked my thigh. And I was like, ow, yes. But he goes, okay, move them. And I'm like, I couldn't move my legs. So I could feel my toes, I could feel my legs, but I couldn't move them at all. And this was devastating, obviously, because I was an acrobat. My degree was in physical education. Everything in my life was around being physical. And suddenly I can't do any of those things. So I went through a major depression, pity party, just spent days in bed, just sleeping, taking pain pills, and like wishing I was dead. And a girlfriend of mine, one of my dear, dear friends, actually was diagnosed with a terminal illness. And she came over to see me after I got out of the hospital. And I, at this point, could kind of use a walker. And she just saw me standing there in the walker. And she was like, Danny, I feel so bad. I can't believe this happened to you. It's so unfair. And I just remember going, oh my God, she thinks it's unfair that I can't walk and she's going to die. Like we knew she was going to die. And so that was like my get my act together moment of going, wow, I've been just pissing on this life that I do have. And maybe it's not going to look the same as I wanted it to. Like speaking of plans, when I was an acrobat, it was the best. It was so much fun. I mean, working at SeaWorld, living in San Diego at the beach, adrenaline. I mean, it was a blast. And so I was like, this is my new path. I'm going to work for Cirque du Soleil. And of course, like that was my plan that was stripped away. And so that happened. And then, through my journey, so many things like that happened. Like I had a business partner who just left. And then my ex-husband had an affair and like that was taken away. And so I've had these moments of just having to start over again and again and again. And during COVID, I've been speaking. The reason I was traveling so much when I met my boyfriend was I've been speaking. And so I traveled to events and conferences. And as we know, 2020 canceled every live event for over a year. And so I was sitting there going, all right, what do I want to do? And I wasn't just a speaker. I had online programs, but one of my programs was this money program. And I started that with my ex-husband. And so every time I launched it after we broke up, it just never hit, never landed the same. And I think part of it was just I wasn't marketing as hard. I felt a little bit weird about it because he was in the course. So I spent 2019 refilming it and revamping it. But even though I refilmed it, something just felt off. And the only way I could describe it is like, if you found an old bag of clothes that you wore in high school and you're like, oh, look at this, it's my high school clothes. And like you go try them on, you're like, whoa, it fits. And you're like, wow, I could wear my clothes from ninth grade. But then you look in the mirror and you're like, there's no way I would go in public wearing like it fits you, but it doesn't fit. Right. Yeah. That was how I felt with my money program. I'm like, it fits. I can do it. I can say all the things. I believe in it. It's an amazing program. I have testimonials, but it somehow just didn't fit me anymore as far as I don't know, but that's the only example I could think of. So hopefully that makes sense to you who's listening.
Yes, it does.
And so I just had this like breakdown. I was literally just crying to my boyfriend, and I'm like, I'm not a fitness expert anymore, because that was my first big brand, was in fitness. I'm like, I'm not a fitness. I don't want to be a money expert. I'm like, the only thing I'm an expert in is starting over. I'm like, do-over Danny. And I said this, of course, completely serious and crying. But as I said it, as soon as I said I'm do-over Danny, it kind of made myself laugh. And I was like, that's so ridiculous. And then I was going, yeah, you know what? There's something to that. And we all have to start over in something. Like, I just kept thinking it's me. I got to start over. I had to do this. And then I was going, to be honest, I feel like everybody in their life has to start over at some point. Moving, like you just moved across the country, new job, losing somebody, getting a divorce, getting out of any relationship. There's an injury, an illness, a huge illness. I mean, there's so many times when we have to start over. And unfortunately, it always feels like a punishment. It feels like, oh, I got to go back. I'm never going to catch up. All my friends are getting ahead, or I should be there by now. But I realize, like, if we can shift that mindset to, instead of feeling like we have to start over, that we get a do-over, like we get to try something different, we get to do it different, then we can actually have fun with it and like create something really new and exciting. So that's kind of where this all came about. And just the big shift that I want people to have is like going, getting
it's
a do-over.
Cool. Yeah, it's cool. First of all, I love the brand Do-Over Danny. That's great. That's genius. But it's so true, because what you said is so interesting, that usually when we think of a big change like that, it's usually like a relationship ending or a job or a move or something bad. And it's like, oh, it's hard to, I mean, the perception is, here's the deal. Most people want to stay in their comfort zone.
Yeah.
And as human beings, our psyche is built to stay in the comfort zone, and that's what we perceive as safe. Okay. Yeah. So our psyche doesn't want change, basically. It wants to stay in this perception of safety zone. So a do-over or a start over can be perceived as like a threat, because it can seem unsafe to the psyche. But in essence, what you're saying is like, oh, like, how can we look at this differently and do it differently?
Yes. And you know what else? And you're so right. It does. It's like we have this fear of what we don't know. The truth is, we never know what's going to happen, but we think that we know what the future is going to look like. You know, for example, of going through a divorce. So I know so many people have and will, or at least we've gone through breakups, is we have this comfort in this relationship, and we have these ideas of what's going to happen in the future. And for me, I was like, we have our 10-year anniversary, and I had all these ideas of what was going to happen. And then suddenly when that relationship is gone, now I'm like, I don't know what my future is. The truth is, I never knew what the future was, but I thought, and I created this future. And so part of the process of this is grieving that future that you're not having, or grieving what you lost. And, I was doing a lot of research and starting over and how people can better get through it. And so I kind of created this framework, which starts with grief, because I think that there's a piece of us, grieving is so natural. And it's, we know when someone dies, there's a grief process, and there's the 5 stages of grief. There's anger and acceptance and all of that. But even losing a job, even moving to a new place, like you're grieving your friends and your home that's in the other state or place that you left, or you're grieving the future, like I'm putting future in finger quotes, like the future that you didn't have. And it's real. That's a real loss. So part of moving on and moving forward and being able to see it as a do-over is first actually even allowing yourself to grieve the part of you that you no longer have.
I love that. I love that you start with that, because I talk about that with my clients too. It's and people, because they think of grieving only like when someone dies. Mm-hmm. But I remember a therapist told me one time, she's like, you could cry and grieve every day over these things that we have made up in our mind. And she's like, and it's okay. Like, because what I'm hearing you say, which is so cool, is like, you can grieve that future fantasy. Yep. And that's where I see most people get tripped up, is this future. Like I can speak for myself. I just turned 50. I'm a half of a century old. And it's like, oh, did I think this is what my life would look like at this point? Hell no.
Mm-hmm.
I was thinking it would be so much more grand and I have a great life. It's like fucking amazing, right? But it's like, I thought it would be like very different and I'd be fucking flying on my private jet around the world or whatever it was I thought.
Yeah.
So there's a grieving of this fantasy of this image that we have of ourselves that isn't the reality. And that can be grieving. And so I love that you put that's the first thing is like, it's okay. And like, we need to grieve that whatever has been quote lost or what the future that we thought was going to be isn't happening either.
Yeah. And grief is an interesting thing because I feel like if you don't go through it, then you get stuck, right? So grief, part of the process of grief or one of the 5 stages of grief is finally acceptance. So getting to the place where you're going, okay, I can cry about it and I can be upset about it, but then finally I have to go, and this is where I am. It might even be where, let's say you're, 45 years old and you wanted to have children and you still don't have a partner and you're like, okay, I have to grieve the children I never had and now get to the place of acceptance that that's not going to be my life and try and look for something new. So it's not just about a person, and it could be an invisible thing. It could be a dream, like I thought I was going to be in this house or whatever it is, but grief allows you to feel okay knowing like your pain is valid and the tears are valid and the anger is valid, but then finally getting to a place of acceptance. And once you have some acceptance, you can move forward. And I think sometimes people just get stuck in one of the stages of grief, like anger is a big one. I've seen so many, and I work with mostly women, so many women going through a divorce and going through a breakup and just staying so angry for years. My best friend growing up, her mom got divorced when we were in high school, and she's still bitter and angry and so pissed at her ex-husband who has completely moved on, new wife, new life. And so we have to get through the stages and know that it's okay. Like the anger stage is valid. The pain is valid. All of that is valid, but allowing yourself to feel it so you can move through it. I think if we don't allow it, we just get stuck there and then we can't move forward to the next phases of life.
Yeah, definitely. And that's a very good point to acknowledge the stages that you're going to go through, but don't get stuck in it. Of like still having the forward motion and knowing there is something on the other side.
Yeah.
So I'm curious, and I want to talk more about your framework, but I'm curious too of in people in this work that you're doing about do-overs and starting over. You mentioned some examples. I'm curious of like what the biggest examples of the people that you work with that they come in with that are in this do-over stage.
Generally, I work with people who are usually it's like 2 things at once. It seems like because maybe it's because of the age of the women I tend to see, like in their 30s. It's career and big relationship do-overs. So, maybe somebody who has gone to college, got a degree, done all the right things, got a career, and now they're in the middle of it going, I do not want to be here and I want to work for myself or I want to do something different. So many people really wanting to shift into something new and totally afraid to let go of the paycheck or not know what's next and not know what's coming. So they're wanting to shift. Or they were in a long-term relationship or a marriage and then they're getting out of it and kind of starting over. And even that kind of has multiple start overs. A lot of times people leaving a relationship means they're leaving the state where they lived or leaving the town where they are. So they're starting over just they might be in a new job because they're moving, they're in a new state, and now they're newly single and never had that lifestyle before. Yeah.
Yeah. That's really interesting of that age range for sure of that. And I think that happens a lot along the way, but mid-30s, I think is a prime time when people have been in a career for a while and then they're like, oh, wait, this is like not fulfilling. I went through that. I'm a perfect example of of this starting over because in my 30s, so I started working in corporate America when I was 24, like right out of college. And I had an amazing career in the fashion business, a great job, which I could have been with that company forever. Very glamorous. I made plenty of money and, traveled. It was great and then I was like 28 and I moved to LA and, I got a master's in spiritual psychology. And it was like, by going through that program, I was like, I am in this job that I'm not fulfilled in and I'm not happy. But I was making so much money and it was a great job and it was secure and I had benefits and it was awesome. And I was like, what am I going to do? And I finally had the courage to leave. But that was I always say that was the scariest thing I've ever done, to walk away from 6 figures, not having a fucking clue what was next. And girl, that was a grieving process, to not have insurance, to not have a paycheck, to not have anything. Talk about grieving. I was like scared to fucking death and grieving. So I get it that age range when you're like, this isn't what I want to do, but I don't know what the thing is.
Yes.
I mean, that's a scary place to be. And that's a huge do-over and start over.
It is. It's so huge. And that's part of the process too, is being in that middle of, I don't know what's next. And I remember that place just in my relationship of my ex had the affair. I wanted to work it out. He kind of did it. So I moved to LA. I was like, well, I'll just leave. I'll wait for you to figure stuff out. 6 months later, he wanted to work things out. And then I was like, nah, I've been doing counseling and like, I need to see you put an effort. But we were in this middle, like we hadn't got a divorce, but we weren't married and we weren't committed. I was seeing other people, we hadn't split. And I just remember sitting there just crying, going, should I get a divorce? Should I not? Like I was going through all these things in my head, like we could work it out. We're good together, but I don't know. I've had this life now and it's kind of cool. And I feel like there's some opportunity. The logical part of me and the safe part of me wanted to go back to my relationship. But then this other piece of me had been unlocked and going, maybe there's something else out there and maybe this happened for a reason. And it was a struggle. And I remember just crying, going, I don't know what to do. I don't know what to do. And my best friend said to me, she goes, you'll know when you know. And I hated that, but it was also the best advice I ever got because I'm like, but I want to know now. And so we get in that place of, like you're quitting your job and you're like, what's next? I don't know. And you just want to know now because you need that safety and you don't know how it's going to work. But I swear every person I've worked with, it's like, even when the rent is due like next week and they don't know how it's going to come, suddenly like an opportunity the night before rent is due comes in and covers it. Like things just happen magically and miraculously, but we don't trust enough. And so we want to control it and know already. And that's this hard part, is just waiting in that middle and just going, I don't know what's next. I don't know what to do. And just sitting in the I don't know and just allowing things to just kind of clear and the dust to settle, like just allowing the dust to settle. But it's so uncomfortable and nobody wants to be in that spot.
It's so uncomfortable to be in the unknown. Oh my God. We're going to take a quick break and I want to get back into your framework of how you really support people through the changes. But we're going to take a quick break and we'll be right back. You're listening to Rock Your Life with Arian Alexander. And my guest is Dana J. And we'll see you in a minute.
You're listening to Fun for Life Radio on Dash because you're happy and you're healthy and plan to stay that way.
Okay, we're back. And if you haven't listened to some of our other shows here on Fun for Life Radio, oh my goodness, we have this whole array of music shows and awesome DJs and talk shows. And it's called Fun for Life Radio for a reason, because we like to have fun for life. So a couple shows that I love one is Truth and Tunes with Pili Montilla. It's an awesome show. She's a music expert, a cultural music expert, and she interviews people from all over the world about their music, the songwriters, producers, the talent. She'll have them play their favorite songs and just really goes in depth behind the scenes with all kinds of cultural music artists. And there's also Hollywood Unfiltered with Dana Buckler, and he goes behind the scenes with all things Hollywood, baby, with all kinds of people in the business, writers, directors, producers, actors, to really get the inside scoop of their lives and their work. And so that's a really cool show too, Hollywood Unfiltered. So check out all of our awesome shows here on Fun for Life. And you're listening to Rock Your Life with Arian Alexander. And I'm here with my guest, Dana J., who's an expert at do-overs and starting over, where we all have places in our life where we have to start over and do things differently. We were talking right before the break how uncomfortable it is to be in the unknown, because we all want to control our whole fucking lives and we can't. And then we sit in the unknown and we're like, what's going to happen? I have to know what's going to happen. What's next? But the magic is in sitting in that uncomfortableness and letting life unfold to the next moment. And that's what I always am with clients. I'm like, you don't ever have to make a decision, because the decision, like what your friend said to you, the decision is made when the decision needs to be made.
Yeah.
So people are like, should I stay? Should I go? Like, should I stay with a job? Should I go? Should I stay with a guy? Should I go? Whatever it is. And you never have to worry about that, because you will decide when you need to decide.
Yep.
And when you're ready to do it, you'll do it. But it's sitting in that unknown place can be so unnerving, for sure.
It is so unnerving. And, you know, part of it, you just said, you nailed the word, which is control, is we feel out of control. We want to find a way to control. And I actually have people I think part of getting out of it and through this process is the 3 C's. The first C is control. So it's finding something you can control, which can be something that has nothing to do with what you're in the middle of. So for example, when I found out that my husband had an affair, it was blindsiding. You know, I'm sure there's a lot of people who are like, yes, guys cheat, or maybe they've been with a partner who cheats over and over. But we had as far as I knew at the time, a great relationship. It was so unheard of and it was very confusing. And so I was devastated. And I worked from home at the time, still do, but I remember just thinking all I wanted to do was sleep in my pajamas, stay in my pajamas, like just be in my pajamas all day, cry all day, stay in bed. And so I don't know where the idea came from, but I just told myself I have to get up every day, do my hair and makeup, and get dressed. Even if I was crying off my mascara 2 minutes later, which I generally was, but just doing something every single day. So it was getting up, do my hair, do my makeup, get up, do my hair, do my makeup. And that was something that was the only thing I could control at that point. I couldn't control what he was doing. I didn't know what was happening in the relationship. I wasn't even eating food, but that was the one thing I could do. And so every day I did that. And slowly the next C is confidence. And for me, confidence comes from the consistency of what you can control. So by me consistently getting up, doing my hair, doing my makeup, getting up, doing my hair, doing my makeup, soon I started to build my confidence back because I was just a wreck. And so control, what was he saying?
Confidence.
Control, confidence. And the third is celebrate. And celebrate is all the little things. So when I was paralyzed, I remember there was one day I decided I wanted to try to get up the stairs, and I was at my mom's house and I'm going, all right, I'm going for this. So it took me about 45 minutes to climb up their 18 stairs, just taking it like one at a time. I'm happy to sit there and rest. I'm trying to stand up, climb up there. And I remember getting to the top of the stairs and being so excited. I'm like, oh my God, I did it. And I looked over the balcony, and right in the moment of feeling excited that I did it, the next thought in my head was like, look at you, you're excited about climbing the fucking stairs. Like, you used to be able to run miles and you were an acrobat, and now you're excited about stairs. And so I like shut that down. And this is the piece we can't do, because we are going to be fighting with ourselves of where we should be, what should have happened if this XYZ didn't happen, if I didn't lose my job, if I didn't quit. So you have to celebrate the small things. So it's really about finding the thing you can control, even if the thing you can control is just doing your hair, even if the thing you can control is just walking to the gym. You don't even open the door yet. You just get there every day and you start doing something a little more. And that's going to build your confidence, the second C, and then celebrate. And every little thing has to be celebrated, because if you don't, you're just going to remain stuck. And it's so hard, because the biggest piece we have in starting over is beating ourselves up over where we think we should be, where we would have been. Because normally the start over, for the most part, a lot of these things aren't choices. And even if they are a choice, even if you chose to move across a country or leave a relationship, there's always a part of your head that's questioning, like, did I do the right thing? What if I didn't? What if I chose to stay instead? So we have to really, really celebrate and be proud of ourselves so we can keep moving forward.
Well, it's cool. I love that you break it down so easily into those 3 C's of control, the things you can control. Mm-hmm. The confidence comes in the consistency. And then celebration. I remember when I had you and I, we haven't talked about this thing we have in common is depression, girl. Mm-hmm. And you've been so public about it, which I love that about you, that you're so public about the mental health experiences. And I think that, and I've been public too, not as public as you, but it's like that, because the shame that comes around that is so fucking ridiculous, because like all of us have mental health. Period. Yeah. And you know, and it's different for every person, and hormones change and things change in our body and chemistry changes and life experience changes. But I remember when I was going through my depression a few years ago, it was terrible. It took me out of the knees and I thought I was going crazy and I didn't know what was happening. And one of the ways I got through it was that place of control, because I was so out of my sorts. Like, I couldn't control my emotions, and people would be like, think happy thoughts. I'm like, when you're in a depression, there's no fucking happy thoughts to be thought. Like, go fuck yourself. You know, there's nothing. It's a deep, dark hole. Yeah. And it's like, all I could do was to just get out of bed in the morning. But what I did is I would shower every day. Like I was like, I'm not going to be that person who like doesn't shower for days. Like I'd get up, I would shower every day. I would still work out, even if it was just a walk, whatever it was. Cause I was like, I could control that. I didn't know that's what I was doing at the time.
Yeah.
But now I get it that you're saying that, because that's the only thing I could control. So I was like, okay, what can I do? I can shower, I can exercise. The rest of the day, who fucking knows what's going to happen? But at least I got that, you know?
That is totally it. I'm so glad you had, I mean, I'm not glad you had that experience, but I'm glad that that was the thing that kind of, I think it's just something that helps if you can find something you could do. And it literally in those places, especially when it's so dark, when you lose someone, when you're in a depression, it literally often is the smallest thing: getting out of bed, putting on a shirt, putting on deodorant, like brushing your teeth every day. I mean, it can be so small. And it's funny where the mind goes, where you're like, okay, I'm just going to shower every day. And I don't know why I came up with like putting on clothes and makeup, because I literally in a normal life didn't even wear makeup every day. But I felt like if I put on makeup, then I'm going to trick myself into feeling better about myself. Like when you look good, you feel good. And so it slowly just helped me get out of that funk. But if you can do just a little thing that builds confidence. You know, I was a personal trainer for almost 10 years, and I loved seeing people build their confidence. And it wasn't because of the weight loss. A lot of times people see, you know, body transformation. And yes, that's part of it. But I think the confidence is built when people are losing weight because they're doing something consistently. They're going to the gym consistently. They're maybe eating a certain diet or eating better consistently. So they're finally doing something for themselves consistently over time. And they're like, okay, that builds up confidence. Every time you say you're going to do something and you do it, you become more confident in yourself. Totally. And so it's all about just finding something you can do and you can control, because whatever happened in your life is out of control. And until you find something you can, you're going to feel like you're drowning.
Totally. And that you're right. The consistency is what builds confidence. And I think that's a part of this too, is in whatever your change is, whatever your do-over is, whatever your starting over is, this point for you, the confidence, it's like confidence. You're not just born with confidence.
Yeah.
You can build it. It is a muscle. And so what you're saying is when you do the thing consistently, you're going to build the confidence around it. And then the celebration is so important. And that's one place that I miss a lot in my life, is the celebrating the moments. But of course, when I'm working with clients, I'm always like encouraging them to celebrate the moments, because I'm like, otherwise we're basically missing life. Like if I'm waiting, so if you're in a do-over situation, a starting over, let's say it's a breakup, right? And you're like, ugh, like it's terrible and you feel awful, but you know, you've got to start over and you've got to do things differently. But if you're still waiting to A, feel better, or B, be in another relationship, or like you say, like if you want to have kids and you don't have a kid, and if you're waiting for that to make you happy, that's missing these moments of life that are so precious. Yeah. So the celebration is so important to have that each day for whatever it is, because that's the moments of, that's life. Like this is life right now in this moment, no matter what is happening in your world or my world. Yeah. And if I'm not celebrating life, I'm like slapping life in the face. If I'm saying I need to have a different job before I can celebrate, or I need to have a different boyfriend or girlfriend before, or I need to have a baby or whatever it is, then I'm slapping life in the face and saying, well, it's not good enough right now, so I'm not going to celebrate it.
Yes.
Like, yay life for right now, and let's create something different, cool too.
Yeah. I think our mind, it's so true. It's like you're literally missing life if you're not doing it. It's really hard in these times because we are generally our harshest critic. And, you know, this comes a lot around for financial stuff. You know, for me, I filed bankruptcy after I was paralyzed. My medical bills were over $250,000. I was 22 years old.
Oh my
and
gosh.
So I was so devastated because I worked so hard to build up my credit when I was young, and then that was taken away from me. And so I remember just being like, well, screw it. And then I didn't file bankruptcy because I was mismanaging money. But then I got in this mind of like, well, shoot, I'm just going to mismanage money. And because I was so angry that happened. So then after I went through that phase, I was like, okay, now I have to build up stuff again. And just to get my credit score to like 650, I remember going, oh, like, why am I here again? But I have to celebrate the 650 when I get to 625 or 675 and 700. Like, even if you're back before where you started, you got to celebrate again. And I know that's the part that can be really tricky. You know, like maybe you're out of debt and somehow you got back in it. Now you're out again and you're like, I'm not celebrating this time because I've already been here, but celebrate it anyway. Celebrate the things you've already done because it's life. That's where you're at. And I honestly believe that life can change so quickly. As fast as it can change negative, it can also change so quickly in the other direction. I've seen people go from, I don't know if you've seen this online. There's a guy named Charlie. He's a friend of my boyfriend. He got this homeless guy who is doing art. Basically, overnight, this guy went from homeless to now has a house. He's selling these paintings. Oprah just bought a painting yesterday. Like his life changed overnight. Homeless to the other day, he had 30,000 followers on Instagram. Then he had 80. I don't know how many he has today, but he is like, his life has changed overnight. Wow. And anyone's life can change overnight. Of course, negatively, like we've seen that, and maybe that's where you're at, but it can change just as quickly in the other direction. And I really believe if you're taking the time and celebrating and just being grateful, that overnight can flip so quickly in the positive direction. You just have to hang on and just keep moving through it and keep having faith and keep celebrating the small things.
Yes. And it's true because the change happens when we're celebrating, when we're being willing to be uncomfortable in the unknown, right? And when we're doing the things that we can control, all these things that you're speaking of, that's when things can really shift. It's not going to shift when I'm like, this sucks and I hate it and it's never going to end and I don't want to change. And like, it's going to change at some point, but it's going to be a longer road.
Yeah.
Instead of like working with life in order to create the change, in order to create the next positive, step or manifestation or whatever you want to call it. That's when life will open up for us, which is, that's what I've seen with myself and clients is like when we have a different point of view around it, that is being willing to be uncomfortable, being willing to be in the unknown, trusting that life will support us. And that's one thing, Robert Holden, one of my favorite teachers and personal development speakers and authors, he always says, life is here for you. Life wants you to thrive. So in this place of change and starting over and doing over, it can be, the human experience can be painful. That's why you talked about the grief, right? Like that's what you have to do is grieve. But it's like remembering that life wants us to thrive. Whatever the pain is in the moment, on the other side, we're going to learn something. It's not going to be as painful. Things are going to be better. But when we're in the change, it can feel like, no, that we can't see it yet. Totally. But how many times have you been, any of you listening, you've had a situation in your life that you thought was so hard and it was painful to change. And on the other side, you look back and you go, oh, I get it.
Yeah.
Like, I get it why this thing happened because here I am today. But you can't see it when you're in it.
No. And so the entire framework, I actually call it the gift. So it's GIFT. And I feel like if we can look at starting over as a gift versus the punishment, whatever. But the second, so G is for grief and I is insight. And this is what you're talking about is the lessons, is what can you learn from this when you're looking back and like, what did I learn from this experience? What was my role in it? How can I take what I've learned to change going forward? When we're starting over, we're never really, there's like this meme and I think it's kind of cheesy, but it's like, you're never really starting over. You're starting from experience, but it's so true. Whatever happens, you can lose a job, but they can't take the skills from you. So you've lost your job. Well, now whatever you've learned, whether it's, management styles or just special skills, you're taking that into your next job and you can use that to ask for more pay, ask for a bigger raise or something, but you have something. And so you're taking those insights and using them to move forward. And then the next part is the F is forgiveness. And this is a piece that I think gets skipped over a lot too. A lot of times we have to forgive maybe a person who's involved or people, if it's losing a job, maybe you're upset over a boss or a coworker or something. Maybe in a breakup, it's the person who maybe did you wrong. But a big piece of forgiveness is forgiving yourself. I think we beat ourselves up for maybe not knowing better or being in the wrong place or saying the wrong thing or whatever the thing that we're beating ourselves up over. But being able to forgive yourself and let that go and it's really about compassion. Honestly, forgiveness is just having compassion for yourself going, I'm in this spot. It's not maybe where I wanted to be. It's not where I wanted to go. But it's kind of like the celebrate thing. You're constantly beating yourself up is not getting you to where you want to go. And then the T is truth. And I got this, like Tony Robbins says, you need to see things as they are, but not worse than they are. So usually we like tend to catastrophize things. So, like when I found out my husband was having an affair, I was like, what did I do? I must be too ugly. I must be too fat. Like all of these things that it had nothing to do with what the reality was. You're losing your job. You're like, oh my gosh, I'm going to be homeless. The kids are not going to be able to eat. I'm never going to get a job again. I mean, we just go way off the rails and catastrophize. But if we just go, okay, what's the truth? Truth is my ex put his penis in another woman's vagina. That's the facts. Here's the box. Truth is boss let me go. Facts are, like, I still have a place to live. It's still 30 days till rent. I have friends. I have couches I could sleep on. Like, I'm not going to be homeless. So, like, we need to just look at the truth instead of catastrophizing. And I think that when we can really just look at things objectively, like from an outsider's perspective, then that can also help us move forward in not making things bigger or worse than they are. Because we just, humans tend to go to worst case scenario and roll down like this crazy path of where things are going to go and end up, when if we look at the facts objectively, we can probably make more rational decisions and realize that things aren't as bad as they totally seem.
Oh my gosh, catastrophizing. It's so true. So I want to talk about a couple of things that you said. First of all, let's talk about that, like the truth. So what I call that is like neutrality. Mm-hmm. So it's like someone will say, in a change situation, let's say you're in a breakup and they're like, but I'm and he did this and she did this and da 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 da. And I'm always like, that's the overlay. Like the neutral statement is, we were together and now we're not. I mean, like, that's all.
Yep.
We were boyfriend, girlfriend, and now we're not. That's the neutrality. But the human form wants to put the overlays of what that means. Well, that means he did this and she did this, and that means that I'm this. And like you say, like, I'm not pretty enough and I'm not good enough, and she's a bitch and he's an asshole and da da da. That's the human form is putting all the overlay on top of it. But the truth is, we were in a relationship and now we're not. Yep. So it's like when you can go back to the simpleness and like break it down, tease it out, like, oh, I had a job and now I don't. Mm-hmm. Instead of like, oh my God, I had this job and now it's changed and now I don't have any money and I'm never going to find another one. And that's the catastrophizing. That's so unhelpful. So it's like reeling it back in to the present moment, to the truth, which I love. And then the forgiveness. Oh my God. Like, this is the key to life, is this place of compassion for self and others. Yes. Because I'm always like, what if no one is doing anything wrong? Mm-hmm. What if everyone is doing the best they can? And what if I can have more compassion for myself and my life and others? So what I see in this place of doing over is where you, like you've been saying through this whole conversation, people can be so hard on themselves. Yeah. So what happens is, I guarantee you, people go, I should have done this. I should have taken that job. Yep. I should have not broken up with her. I should have, whatever the thing is, and think they second guess their decisions instead of saying the decision that was made or whatever the situation, it's all for my highest good. Life wants me to thrive. And the more compassion I can have for myself of like, I'm okay. Yeah. There can't be a wrong decision because this is the reality of what's happening. Even if my decision created a whole fucking shit show, it's like, it still was meant to be because I did it, because that's the reality. That's the truth, like you're saying. Yes. So the compassion is, it's all okay. I'm not doing anything wrong and no one else is doing anything wrong. It's a hard place. It's not a hard place. It's a hard thing for the human form to wrap around because we want to make things right or wrong and good and bad. Mm-hmm. But my background, spiritual psychology, that's what I do. Is my framework is like, what if no one's actually good or bad or right or wrong? And how do I have more compassion for myself and everyone else on the planet in their experience and soften? And that makes things a lot easier.
So good. Yeah, I love that. What if no one is right or wrong? Like, what if everyone's just doing the best they can and we give people the benefit of the doubt? And it just takes off so much pressure and so much of the shoulds and coulds. And the reality is, you are where you are, right? We go down to the truth and go, we're here. So there's no shoulds, there's no coulds. What's already done is done. So how do we just let that go, have compassion for ourselves or for the other person involved, and move forward with grace? And I think that there's steps, and it sounds so simple, it's like, okay, that sounds great. in practice, it's not always so easy. It takes a lot of self-awareness. It takes a lot of allowing yourself to feel pain, which so many times we don't want to. We avoid, we drink, we do all kinds of things to avoid pain. But if we can sit through it and we can sit in it and we can look for the insights and ask questions of what can we learn, we can get so much out of it. And there are so many instances, like you said, where you can look back and remember, like, that was the worst thing that ever happened to me at the time. But looking back, I'm so glad it did, because that changed the trajectory of my life forever. And interestingly enough, because I had been through so many scenarios like that, it was like, I remember when I was paralyzed, I was like, this is the worst thing that's ever happened to me. And I was so devastated. But I have the insight now and the awareness looking back going, wow, that changed my life. And if that hadn't happened, I wouldn't have ended up in my career. I wouldn't have met my husband. I wouldn't have done all these things. So looking back, it was the best thing that ever happened. And so I remember in the middle of finding out about my ex, about his affair, and I was devastated and bawling and crying. I just remember going, one day I'm going to look back and it's going to be the best thing that ever happened. And I also remember thinking, but right now it fucking sucks and I hate it. And I don't know how it's ever going to look like this is a blessing. But I knew just from past experience that one day it would make sense. After a year, I was like, okay, this still doesn't make sense. Why did this happen? It's still not fun. And even after 2 years, I was getting little glimpses of a new life and getting glimpses of what things could be like, but it still was painful. And I still had anger and going, why did this happen? And now I'm 5 years out and I can confidently say I'm so glad that things happened the way they did. And I've learned so much and I've found so much compassion, and I can talk to him and have a conversation and not be heartbroken anymore. But it takes time, and in the moment, it sucks. And there are some things, like losing a loved one, the death of someone, it may never make sense, but you will find ways to make meaning of it. And I think that's part of life, is being able to make meaning out of something. So my friend Kelly, the girl who passed away, when she had told me she felt bad for me for being paralyzed, I just knew in that moment that I could no longer take for granted the life I was given. And so while looking back, I still don't think it was fair that she isn't here today. I still don't think it makes sense that she had to die at a young age. So while that doesn't make sense to me, I still made meaning out of her life for myself. And so I think that no matter what, I'm never going to look back and say, wow, that was the best thing that ever happened. I'm so glad she died. So there are circumstances that we're not going to say that, I'm sure, especially in those cases. But I can look back and say, that was a turning point for me to change me into a better person. That was something that helped me become better and learn a lot. And so while we're all going through difficult things, we can really, even in the middle of it, even if you're sitting in it now, you can sit there and know that your future self is going to look back and go, I'm proud of myself for what I went through, and I am going to learn something from this. And if you can start looking for the lessons now in the middle of it, you'll get through it.
Oh, totally. I love that. And that's part of the insight. So I love your framework for this, your gift framework. And you have your amazing TEDx talk where you really share, about this. So tell us where we can find your TEDx talk.
Yeah, just go to YouTube and type in TEDx Danny J. That's the best way I think I can find it. It is called The Secret of Starting Over. And that was really an amazing opportunity to do. It's been a goal of mine to do a TEDx talk for years. And finally I said, 2020 is going to be the year. And then LOL, the universe was like, nope, no stages in 2020, but I get it in 2021. And so again, we can make all the plans in the world, but the universe is going to just make its own plans. So you got to just roll with it.
Okay. Love it. Okay. TEDx Danny J, just Google that. And then what's your Instagram?
Yeah. And actually, if you go to my Instagram, it's dannyj.com. It's DANNY like a boy. And then you spell out .com, DOTCOM. And the link in my bio actually has the TEDx talk. It has some freebies and fun stuff there, ways to contact me. You can always DM me there. And I have a podcast called The Best Life Podcast, which is really fun. We do a lot of talk about personal development, this kind of stuff, relationships, starting over, and even entrepreneurship. So it's a really fun podcast.
Yeah, The Best Life Podcast is awesome. It's Danny J and her bestie, Jill Coleman. And it's so fun. They're amazing. So definitely go listen to The Best Life Podcast. It'll be on your top podcast list, I'm sure.
Yeah.
DannyJ.com and Instagram. Okay, cool. So I want to wrap with, this has been awesome. I'm so glad to have you here today. And I want to wrap with a couple of my lightning round questions for you. And I'm just going to start with one I ask every guest this. So I'm curious of your answer. What would you tell your 21-year-old self?
Oh gosh, I would tell my 21-year-old self that everything's going to be okay and just trust myself more. I think there was too many times where I was so worried about doing the right things and I knew in my gut what I needed to do, but all of the outside forces, adults, telling me something else. So I'd say just like keep trusting, keep doing you, and everything's going to work out.
Love it. Everything's going to be okay. I love that. Now that COVID is lifting somewhat, where are you going to travel to? Like, what's your travel destination when you can go there here this year?
Oh my gosh. Well, I've already been traveling, honestly, since December. I've been to Mexico twice. And I'm going to Bali in October, knock on wood, if that travel allows us. But I've actually been on probably 20 flights in the last 8 weeks, all domestic. But yeah, been to Mexico twice already.
All right, good. Bali, here she comes. Yep. Awesome. What's the most exciting thing that you're looking forward to this year?
My book. I have been working. I've been saying I'm going to do a book and a book proposal for the last 5 years. And through my divorce, that all kind of got pushed aside. So I'm finally really actually doing it. I am working on the proposal. So hopefully that will be done by fall. And then knock on wood, by 2022, I'll have my book out. So that's what I'm really excited about.
Awesome. Well, you have so many sources out. Go follow Danny J on Instagram because you will just not believe her fucking life. Like you are, I'm so impressed by you of what you've experienced. So your book will be perfect. So that's exciting. Light ahead to the book and everything going smooth and graceful with that. That's so exciting.
Thank you. So excited.
You are welcome. All right. Well, I've loved having you on today. I'm just a girl crush still and forever. And and I just think it's been awesome for anyone that's going through any changes in their life. So thanks again for being here.
Thank you so much. I appreciate it. Love to hear from y'all.
Bye.